ever since, obviously, the 2019 general election, Boris Johnson and the rest of the Conservatives have been making big, well, not really big waves, but more big noises about the term levelling up. And of course, as we've explained before, if you want to generally actually level up the country, you will not just need investment, you will need policies and maybe even putting some restrictions on foreign trade to help, shall we say, local businesses and local manufacturers, help them to, well, compete in the wider world. If you want to do this whole global Britain and help level up the rest of the country. Then, of course, as we've said before, just like all the Tory party, they are very split on all these things. And there are one side which is very, we are all global Britain, and of course the other side which is very much level up. And of course, one cannot succeed if you pursue the other. If you pursue this global Britain agenda, which they definitely seem to be doing at the moment, then you can't do any of that to actually help Britain level up. It just doesn't fit with that ideology, and we are seeing that in very, very much play. And we are expecting at some point this year a white paper on levelling up to actually tell us what this actually means. Michael Gove has been put in charge of that. So we're sitting and waiting essentially on Michael Gove to come and tell us exactly what levelling up is, exactly almost 2 years after the phrase first came out. So, don't hold your breath at the moment. But as always, before we go diving into this article, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page, the YouTube subscriptions as well, and of course, the one-off donation link called Buy Me a Coffee, where you can, well, buy me a coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do support the channel that way. So, on with this then. So this comes from The Guardian with the title of The Guardian View on Levelling Up. A flagship policy, adrift and becalmed. 2 years after Boris Johnson made levelling up the lodestar of his new administration, the public still struggles to actually understand what the Prime Minister actually means by it. A new YouGov poll has found that only half of those questioned either had no idea what the phrase signifies or were not completely sure. The government's flagship domestic policy resembles a ghost vessel drifting in a mist of Whitehall obfuscation and procrastination. And of course, after a very torrid period, Johnson badly needs to change this in the new year. However fuzzy the follow-through, the political logic of his original pledge to level up England remains crystal clear. As it seeks to hold together the new electoral coalition forged in the 2019 Brexit election. Improving the situation and prospects for voters in the North and the Midlands is fundamental to the government's hopes of re-election. The pots of money distributed very piecemeal via the very various levelling up funds described as just a drop in the ocean by the Centre for Cities think tank just will not cut it. Having promised to restore pride, regenerate places, and deliver economic growth in the Red Wall, a very convincing plan is urgently required to demonstrate just how this will be done. The indicators are that this will not be very forthcoming, and the party, for fear of antagonizing voters in the more prosperous South. The twice delayed, of course, levelling up white paper is now expected by the end of January, and the briefing suggests its emphasis will be on devolution and the reform of local government throughout the country. The mayoral model is likely to be promoted beyond city regions, and the Cameron-era local enterprise partnerships may be targeted for replacement by more democratically accountable bodies. Given that the Secretary of State for Levelling Up, Michael Gove, has been told by the Treasury that no more money is on offer, proposing how to redistribute more power instead carries an obvious attraction. It allows the high-minded talk about community spirit and, of course, trusting the people, but comes without the expensive price tag. Sadly for Mr. Gove and even the Prime Minister, real empowerment cannot be delivered on the cheap. Levelling up regions and places that have been neglected for decades, which bore the brunt of the post-crash austerity, requires significant long-term investment in public services, an improved infrastructure, and of course, costly revolution in vocational education and educational retraining. Greater devolution is a praiseworthy goal in the over-centralized country, where all roads and even high-speed rail lines lead to London. But without the necessary resources and the significant expanded local revenue raising powers, it will amount to an abdication of strategic responsibility by the state. One recent study observed that the slashing of government grants by the local authorities since 2010 hit the urban areas with a legacy of industrial job loss especially hard. The proliferation of electoral mayors across the country looks more like a distraction than a solution to the problems in the post industrial England. In a speech last summer, which we all very much remember for Johnson saying nothing, Mr. Johnson took the inspiration from the example of Germany's effort to try and narrow its east west economic divide after reunification. But successive German governments have spent at least 2 trillion euros reducing the gap, whereas Rishi Sunak has effectively capped the government's main levelling up fund at 4.8 billion for this parliament. If the government will not draw the appropriate lessons from the German experience, the Labour Party should spell them out. This amorphous new agenda may become an object of mockery, but what it does not deliver from now on will be crucial in deciding the outcome of the next election. And I've said that before. The levelling up promises, of course, for Boris Johnson and co and the rest of the Conservatives in the Red Wall will be entirely dependent on them doing this. And as we've said before, Rishi Sunak here, in a blatant act of self-sabotage of his very own boss, is sabotaging Boris Johnson's key flagship policy. Why on earth would you be sabotaging this, putting a cap on this? And we've said this before. When you do investment into the UK, yes, you are spending money, and obviously that money has to, quote, come from somewhere. But the good thing is when you do this, it goes into the country. You get it back. You are literally spending money to create money. And in cases like this, and especially in Germany, where, again, they've spent 2 trillion euros on, trying to sort out their, east-west divide. And I'm sure there'll be some Germans here who will tell us, the successes and there's some things that haven't been successful and vice versa. But overwhelmingly, from what I've at least read into it, it has been, successful. But you need to spend the money to do it. Okay, so you get a local mayor. Then what? So what? Without, again, the money to build into new projects, infrastructure investment, apprenticeships, adult retraining, it means nothing. And again, we've said this before, but this is somewhere where Labour can really strike at the next general election, saying, well, they promised this and they delivered nothing to you. And again, it's the whole thing of, I think, the next election, Starmer and co really have to go after the promises that Johnson made and examining them to the minute detail how they have not delivered on these promises, to basically say, look, Johnson promised you all this. He didn't deliver a single thing. And what he did deliver was so little and so ineffectual that it pretty much amounted to nothing, which is what they've given already from some of this money. So all in all, when this white paper does come out, I'm not expecting a lot. If it does mean more like devolution, more local mayors, it's just an extra level of bureaucracy. As may or may not that might mean. And of course, the local mayor powers at the moment are very, very limited. So unless there is going to be a proper expansion of like local mayor powers that come with this, I don't see this being very effective at all. But that's what we expected, to be honest. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and an optimization link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do support the channel that way. And of course, we'll see you all next time.